All righty, let's get right to it. The Bud Light guest line. All guests appear on the Bud Light guest line. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Let's get out to Brian Geltzeiler. He is Sirius XM NBA radio host, and we've had him on before. And I was saying, Brian, I don't want to put the pressure on you, but you're kind of becoming one of our favorites here. Really appreciate it, man.
Oh, I bet you say that to all the boys. How are you doing today, guys?
We're doing well. Let me ask you this: how do you think the Warriors are doing today? How'd they do in the last? How'd they do yesterday?
Yeah, listen, I it's not. So I'm gonna hit the Warriors and I'm gonna defend them at the same time. It's not like the Warriors to sell low on somebody, and they sold low on James Wiseman yesterday. With all that said, I think and we've talked about this before, guys. When you are paying the amount of payroll that the Warriors are paying, and the numbers are as high as they are, every financial decision is important. You're not just throwing caution to the wind when you're in excess of a $300 million or more luxury tax payroll with your luxury tax. It's crazy the numbers that Joe Lacob and this ownership group pay every year. If you were not, and so I'm beating them up on selling Wiseman low, but I'll also say this. If you made the decision already that you're not going to extend the guy, then you got to go get value for him. And in the Warriors' lexicon, bringing Gary Payton back was value. Because it's funny, I talked to Sam Amick of The Athletic today in an interview that's going to air on my show on NBA Radio tomorrow, and Sam made a fantastic point, which was that this ownership group feels an obligation to these guys, this core that has won them 4 titles. And even though it has not been a pretty season at all, and a lot of things have gone wrong, and it doesn't look wonderful, this group has earned the fact to have reinforcements added. And you need bench reinforcements on this team. Gary Payton proved he fit in well last year. He played very well. I mean, if we're all being honest here, guys, I love Klay Thompson, one of my all-time favorite players. He's not the defender he once was. So you combine all those things together, Payton was necessary to be able to shore up this bench. And if Wiseman was the guy you weren't going to pay anyway, then he becomes, even though you're selling low on the guy who at one point had a lot more value, he kind of became disposable to them. So I kind of feel like the Warriors yesterday, for the spot that they're in, to try, and again, you want to defend this title. You don't want to throw in the towel, even with where they are in the standings, even with Curry hurt. Curry will be back in time to make some kind of run. They brought reinforcements on board, sacrificed a little bit of future that maybe not be the future, because I don't think they love Wiseman, for something that really helps in the present.
Brian, before I ask my Warrior question, I got to say something to you and tell you something about me. There is no better American actor in any series in our lifetime than Tony Soprano and The Sopranos. Your Twitter bio says, Grant Hill once called me Tony Soprano, and you got that there. Do you agree with me that that is the best series in American television?
I 100% agree with you. As a matter of fact, I will tell you that there's very few people on this planet you will speak to that know more about the show than I do. I've watched, right now, I'm on probably, since the show aired, I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of my 55th watch all the way through. You have to understand, Darryl, that I live right
oh, come
down away
on.
from where Tony Soprano lives.
No way!
This stuff was filmed in my backyard. I go to these locations every day. Okay, and some of the Sopranos, like I grew up with these guys. You know, like I know this like you wouldn't believe. And that Grant Hill story is a great story, because I was walking off an NBA TV set, All-Star, at the Staples Center in 2018, and Jared Greenberg, host on NBA TV, is a dear, dear friend of mine, and he likes to bust my chops and call me the Tony Soprano of NBA TV, because I have this whole Jersey dialect, and that's my thing. And I was walking off the set as Grant was walking on the set, and he pulled me into a hug and goes, "My man, Tony Soprano." And I never forgot that. So, yes, that's in my Twitter bio.
I love it.
Well, we can talk basketball in a sec.
I got to get my Warrior question in.
You can get it in a sec. You mentioned Jared Greenberg. You know what? I've really come around on him the last couple years. But where did he come from? It seemed like he came out of nowhere, and boom, he was on the scene.
Well, so here's Jared's deal. Jared he went to Hofstra on Long Island. He ran the radio station for Hofstra on Long Island, and then he got a job at MSG Varsity, which was, I don't think it exists anymore, but at the time it was MSG's high school arm covering the high school basketball scene in the New York metropolitan area. And then he caught a big break. Interview with NBA TV, they really liked him, and they brought him on board. And as time has gone on, Jared's profile has really raised within Turner to a point where he's in the regular sideline reporter rotation, and he is the brainchild behind Crunch Time. I mean, he hosts it, guys, but it was his idea. Like Jared, when it comes to producing content, he's a really, really bright guy. He's got a lot of ideas, and he's a really hard worker. So I will tell you this. You're right. He's burst onto the scene. He's really good at what he does, and it couldn't happen to a better human being.
Brian, help me out. My partner and I got a bet. I got the Warriors are going back-to-back. He's got the field. And, yet the trade deadline.
Go ahead and congratulate me,
the Kevin
Brian.
Durant thing, that was a big deal. Dallas got better, but the pedigree, the Warriors getting beat 4 out of 7, Brian, I'm like, until I see it, I'm holding on. Would you say, you know what, young man, save your money because you're going to be paying? Or do you got to see the Warriors get beat by one of these teams? And I'm including Denver and the teams in the East. The Warriors got a moxie about them, Brian.
Darryl, I'll say this. I hope you didn't bet them a lot.
100.
Okay?
Wow.
And this is why I'm going to say that and why I think Matt's onto something here. So the Warriors, with where they stand right now in the conference, and a lot of what you say is true. Listen, they're the champs till they're not. And they're not going to be an easy out for anyone. But here's my issue with the Warriors right now. The fact is they can't win on the road. I want you to think about this number I'm going to give. They're 7-21 on the road. They've lost 3 of every 4 games this season they've played on the road. They are not going to make it into one of the top 4 seeds in the conference. I just don't think that's going to happen. Is it possible? I guess it is possible. I mean, they're not that far back. But I think it's going to be very tough for them to do that, especially in light of this Curry injury, which means to advance, you're going to have to win some road games. And they can't beat the bad teams on the road, let alone the good teams on the road. And listen, early in the season, it's one of those things, kind of an early season quirk, and maybe it evens out. These guys were 2/3 of the way into the season. It hasn't evened out much at all. They're struggling on the road still. And that's my issue with the Warriors repeating. If you're not going to be able to go into some good places where you have to win, Denver, Memphis, these types of teams, it's going to be really, really hard for the Warriors to be able to repeat if they can't win on the road.
Brian Geltzeiler joining us on the Bud Light guest line, 95.7 The Game. He's XM-NBA. He's an XM NBA radio host, and we love talking to him. Let me ask you this: who got better in the West? Like how would you handicap the field right now after everybody made their moves?
All right, so listen, I think 2 teams, obviously 3 teams really elevated themselves. Obviously the Suns have now put themselves in a position where they can beat everyone in the West if everything falls right for them and they're healthy. Listen, I think I still have concerns about the Suns' ability to defend and keep the ball out of their own basket. I think giving up Mikal Bridges takes away a major, major piece. He's probably one of the best wing defenders in the league, if not the best. But you brought in Kevin Durant, and you're going to be able to outscore most teams that you play with that Durant-Booker combination. And Chris Paul, at this stage of his career now, doesn't need to score on this team. And that's a big development there. Yeah. So obviously, Phoenix is first. I love what the Clippers did. I really do. Eric Gordon's going to help them a ton. And like a low-key great move is Mason Plumlee. They've been playing small with Zubac on the bench, or they've been playing Moses Brown. Plumlee's a good player. Is he a great player? No, but he's a good player. He's a good passer, which they need more of that. Their offense is way too ISO heavy. He's not the best rim defender in the world, but he's a good rebounder. He's a physical defender. He's going to help them a lot. So I love really what the Clippers do. I mean, Bones Highland's hit or miss, and he'll help them in a couple of games. But the beautiful thing about their depth, if Highland's not hitting shots, you put him on the bench. It's simple. You got plenty of other guys to play. So I really like what the Clippers did. I think the Lakers got better. Here's my problem with the Lakers. So, you trade Russell Westbrook, and then you want to trash him on the way out, and it's leaked to Dave McMenamin of ESPN. He's a vampire and all that stuff, and they want to make him out to be a bad team. And there's 2 sides to that story. There's no doubt. You bring in D'Angelo Russell, who's one of the worst teammates in the league. I mean, geez, the Warriors had him, guys. They couldn't wait to ship him out. They realized week 2 they made a mistake with this guy. In Brooklyn, Brooklyn tried to put like a silk head and a pig with him and make it look better than it was. You know what happened with the Lakers the first time around, and this time in Minnesota. Listen, him and Karl Anthony Towns were the best of friends. A year ago, Karl Anthony Towns was leaning on management. Get rid of him. We don't want him around anymore.
Wow.
He's a really selfish guy. And I just wonder how that's going to play in LeBron's world. That's my big thing. Because Russell Westbrook is, he's very stubborn. He's pig-headed, but he plays hard. He wants to win. Not the best defensive player in the world. Russell will have these moments if the ball's not in his hands where he just completely and entirely checks out. He really doesn't want to be one of the guys. I'm really very, very curious to see how much of a fit that is because he's got talent and he can shoot the ball and they need shooting. And listen, Malik Beasley's a great addition. Vanderbilt's a great addition. The Bamba-Bryant swap certainly should strengthen them defensively. So they did some good things. But this whole thing, like Russell Westbrook is the worst thing ever for our locker room, and we're going to replace him with D'Angelo Russell. I don't know about that, guys. That's kind of like replacing Charlie Sheen with Ashton Kutcher in 2.5 Men. I don't know what we're doing here.
Brian, let me ask you about this in the East. We know it's Milwaukee. Boston was just there. I get that. And you'll talk to no bigger Harden fan. Because I argue with my guy, the dude's special. I know he gets a lot of criticism, but he's changed his game, Brian, and I don't think Philly is looked at like a threat. Talk to us about the Sixers with this new look Harden.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. I picked Philly to win the title at the beginning of the season. I had Philly and Denver in the finals beginning of the season, and I'm not feeling bad about any of it. I don't feel bad about it. I think Philly can win it all. I totally agree with you about James Harden. He has changed who he is to fit in this team in a way that he never has in his career. This is Joel Embiid's team. Joel Embiid is the best player on this team. James Harden is the second best player on this team. And he's leading the league in assists. The guy's been phenomenal. And so much of that is, you know what? I just got to get the big guy the ball on the spots that he likes. He's kind of simplified it all. It's not all that complicated. And you know what? He gets to take just enough step-back threes that satisfies him a little bit. He's playing a much better game off the dribble. He's in terrific condition, better shape than he's been in a long time. And he's, for once here in his career, it's all about winning. He knows he's in a great situation. He's where he wants to be. He's who he wants to be with. Listen, him and Embiid don't exactly get along wonderfully. It's not a bad relationship, but they're not the best of friends. But they play well together, and that's the bottom line. I love what I'm seeing out of Philly. Here's my big fear with Philly in the East right now. Boston's a tough matchup for them for whatever reason. I think Philly can beat Milwaukee. I think they can beat anybody else in the conference. I worry about them against Boston. They struggle with Tatum and Brown. And the other night, listen, they ended up losing to Boston in a game. Jaylen Brown leaves early, and Tatum scores, 12 points, 14 points? Yet when Doc got caught in an offense-defense switch late in the game because Thibault guarded Tatum most of the game, and they end up with Maxey on Tatum, and Tatum blows by him, and that's it. That's the tough part. And they just shipped out Thibault. Listen, I love the guy they brought in, Jalen McDaniels. I think it was a brilliant move by Daryl Morey, and he'll help them a lot. But I still picked them to win the title. I'm still on them, but I do worry about them in that Boston matchup.
Yeah, it's interesting about Harden. I like the one thing, I never thought Harden was a selfish player. I just thought he had to play that way in Houston.
It's bad. It's an interesting point. I think, listen, when he had trouble with Chris Paul, and he probably shouldn't have had trouble with Chris Paul. Now, listen, Chris Paul's not the easiest guy in the world either, but Paul was okay to let him take the spotlight. He wanted Russell Westbrook instead of Chris Paul, and then he had problems with Westbrook. James had a tough time sharing that ball in the backcourt, but he truly has made these changes with Embiid. He's okay being the second banana to Embiid, and to me, it's such an important mental adjustment. And it's funny because I interviewed him before the season began. We're at Sixers training camp, me and my partner Sam Mitchell, and I said to him, I said, "You look terrific. Look like you're in great shape." He's like, "I'm going to win the MVP this year." Yet when from the jump, he didn't look like a guy that was going to win the MVP this year. Not because he didn't want to, but because he understood that playing team basketball was going to be what is best for this group, and making sure that listen, the thing about Philly, it's Joel Embiid's world, and if you're there, you're living in Embiid's world, and you have to be willing to do that. James has not only been willing to do that, he's embraced it enthusiastically, and I'm pretty impressed with it.
Hey, Brian, thanks as always, man. We love talking to you, and hope we can catch up with you maybe before the playoffs start.
Would love that, guys. Reach out anytime. It's always a pleasure with the two of you.
Hey, Brian, give us the score Sunday real quick.
So here's what I'll give you. I got, let's say, Kansas City 31, Philly 20.
Get him off.
That's my number. That's what I got, B. Take it easy.
Hey, Brian, we're East Coast guys. You got to stick with the East Coast.
31.
I'm a Giant fan. I can't.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, really, I can't. I cannot. I won't be able to sleep at night, guys, if I root for the Eagles. I don't even like the Chiefs and Andy Reid either.
All right,
but I can't
fair
root
enough.
for the Eagles, guys.
All right, man. Take care, buddy. That's Brian Geltzeiler.